All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm here with a guest who is, I think that you've actually been one of the most recommended guests, and I just haven't reached out to you before. I mean, I often ask people who listen to the podcast who they want to hear locally, and your name has definitely come up a lot. And I think that part of it too is that you've been in so many projects over the years in Winnipeg that people know you from sort of all different types of sounds and aspects of the local music scene. But I think before we get into any of that, the best way to start this off is if you want to introduce yourself and just give a quick background on what it is you do as an artist.
Okay, so some people might know me as Begonia. Some people may know me as my Christian name, Alexa Dirks. Depends who you are, really. But Begonia is my main musical project at the moment. But I've been touring for 15 years, been a part of a lot of different bands in the Winnipeg scene, played at a lot of bars in the Winnipeg sphere back in the day. And yeah, uh, what can I say? I'm a pop artist. Yeah, that's
Sure.
my vibe.
Sure, and I think that Begonia, I mean, this current persona you have, and this project has probably been your most widely known and widely successful one. It seems anyway. I mean, it seems like every time I hear about anything Manitoba music related, like your name is up there on lists or at shows or So you're definitely getting attention, which is I'm sure is lovely to, to
Oh
receive.
gosh, the support from Winnipeg has been amazing and truly makes me feel like such a star. And then I go to some other places in the US and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. But it's like Winnipeg like raises me. Am I allowed to swear on this
You can say
podcast?
whatever you like. Yep.
Okay, Winnipeg raises me the fuck up, and I feel so loved by the community here. And I mean, in turn, I love them back. I still live here. I want to be a part of this community. So the fact that I've been so supported is like something I definitely don't take for granted.
For sure, for sure. And you just put out a new record in February, and I was kind of looking back on some of your stuff on Bandcamp and when the singles were released and things like that. And you kind of this happened right when the pandemic was sort of in full swing. I know your previous album was sort of right before everything everything went crazy, the world went crazy, and then you had this new one that must have been recorded and worked on sort of during that time. And I'm sure you don't want to talk about the pandemic. I'm sick of talking about it, but that's got to have an effect on just making the work in general, right? I mean,
Yeah, and it's
being
hard.
immersed in that.
It's hard to avoid it, and I feel the same way as you, where it's like every time I think of bringing it up because it is part of the story, it kind of feels like okay, nobody wants to hear about this because also we were all collectively traumatized by that time, and I understand, but like it or not, like it is part of the story of this album. And I mean, when the pandemic lockdowns first started, I was kind of shocked, like off the road, like just this hard stop, and then
Yeah,
forced to be home as everyone else was. But I just absolutely was not mentally prepared for what I would be uh, going through in that time. And I wasn't creative at first at all. Like a lot of the songs on this album I had started before the pandemic was even a thing,
yeah.
just casually. It wasn't like I had a concept for this album kind of like scratched out. It was like, okay, um, I was just writing songs with my pals, with my co-writers, Matt Schellenberg and Matt Peters, dead men. Um, we were just writing songs. And then the pandemic lockdown hit, and I just really had to deal with some mental health stuff. And maybe about a year in is when I started feeling like, okay, I think I have something. I think I want to work on something. And it kind of came together in a way, there wasn't a lot of pressure attached. It was like, I don't even know when I'm going to tour this. I don't even know if this is an album. And then it was like one foot in front of the other. It's like every time I took a step forward or like wrote another song or made another decision, then the path just continually like revealed itself, if that makes sense.
It does
So
make
that's
sense.
kind of
Yeah,
how this album felt. And then when like it was just by feel mostly. It's like, okay, I feel like these are the songs. I feel like this album is done. Okay, now I have to come up with a name. Like it wasn't like this huge thought out or like pre-planned process, really. Yeah.
well, and the reason I'm kind of interested in your take on this is because I mean I've talked to obviously a lot of people who have had similar issues that the tourings had to be canceled abruptly, and all their plans as creative people have just been kind of gone down the toilet for 2 years and change. But I mean, if I'm talking to say a metal band or someone that has music that is more not aggressive the word, but it seems like more a way to like pop has maybe the stigma of being an escapism, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
this happy thing that you want to listen to sort of get out of what real life is. And meanwhile, you're making this kind of music during this time when everything sucks. Was it more difficult for you than maybe it would have been for someone who can get that kind of catharsis from bashing into a drum
Yeah,
set?
I mean, I do feel like I bash into things in my own way. Like the kind of like pop music that I write is definitely, I mean, on this album there were some lighter tones that came out of me that I definitely was not expecting, and maybe it was a defense mechanism or some sort of escape. I don't even know, but like I'm not really the person that's writing like happy love is the happiest thing like all the time.
Yeah,
But then on
that's
this
fair. Yeah,
last album there were a couple songs that it was like happy love is cool and like friendship is cool, and I had never really allowed myself to fully explore those things because I was like, I'm not a pop star like that. And then got over myself, is what I feel like. I just was writing these songs and I was like, well, this is clearly a part of me. And if I'm trying to be an authentic bitch and like show people, if I'm trying to be authentic and practicing what I'm fucking preaching, then this is on the record. And this is just as much a part of me as screaming into the ether on fear. Like it's all coming from the same body. So yeah.
yeah, and that's another thing that's come up a lot on the show too is the idea that this is my impression anyway that people in Winnipeg and Manitoba, maybe more in other places, I'm not sure, but have this really strong bullshit detector, and I think audiences they want something that's authentic, and they can tell right away if someone is not being themselves on a record or in a live show.
Yeah, I feel that definitely, where it kind of like it does the music community. It's like there's not a lot of fluff in it in that way.
No,
It's like people are doing their thing and they're doing it wholeheartedly and they're doing it because they can't picture themselves doing it anything else. And people here aren't doing it. Well, I mean, whatever. That's such a broad stroke, but like a lot of people that I know aren't doing it for the money, for the fame. They're doing it because they're artists and they
yeah,
can't see themselves doing anything else. So
well they can't turn it off,
I
right?
love
It
it.
comes out regardless of whether they want to or not.
Well,
They're gonna make
exactly,
art. Yeah,
totally. And it's true. People are smart. Like people feel that. People hear if you're trying to sell them shit. And
yep.
that's why social media is so hard for me sometimes because I feel like I want to be a part of it. And there are times where I can engage and it can be really fun for me. And then there are other times where it's like, fuck, everyone knows I'm just trying to sell something right now. And I don't want to fucking do this. Like there's just like, it's such a double-edged sword of like being in the industry in that way.
Well, and that's I mean you have a very visual aspect of what you do as well. So that's got to be even harder is knowing that you have I mean you have bright colors and you have lots of videos and you have I mean not everyone who makes music has that strong of a visual presence. So that's got to be even more of a challenge for you to maintain that when you don't necessarily want to be doing
Well,
that all
yeah,
day.
and with that, that's more fun for me. The visual aspect is so fun for me, and that brings me so much life. And like growing up being in bands for so long and then doing this solo project, which like, yeah, I'm in all the pictures, but I don't do this alone. Like there's so many people that go into making everything possible, and collaborating in that sense with mostly Winnipeg people
Yeah.
is such a way to find your freaks, like kind of and make a new band for the day. Like you do a video shoot, you do a photo shoot, you're in a band for the day. Like you're collaborating and you're making this piece of art together. That brings me so much life. That's the shit I love. It's the then figuring out how to market it after that is so fucking annoying. And then everything that you do distilled into this little, and it's like, oh, but it's again, there are some days where I wake up and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what I want to do. And I love being on the internet and it brings me life. And then there are not most days, but like it's probably like a 60-40, 70-30, like not into it. But like I wake up and I'm just like, fuck this shit. No one wants to hear me go, hey guys, like one more time in front of the camera. Like it's hard.
So okay, with that in mind, then how do you? I mean, how do you get past that? Because you kind of, unfortunately, that's part of it now, right? No one can
Oh
just
yeah.
be making music. You have to be your own publicist, and because you're interacting with everyone sort of 24/7 on social media. And like you mentioned at the beginning, people in Winnipeg have a good familiarity with you, and they've known your work for years. But like you're going to the States shortly, and
Yeah.
you have to kind of probably reintroduce yourself or introduce yourself for the first time to a lot of those audiences. So is there a challenge in that, in sort of trying to put forward sort of who you are and what you are in these little clips and little short blurbs to new audiences?
Yeah, and I mean, for better for worse, I don't overthink my shit when I put stuff online. And I think maybe that's sometimes what gets me caught up is that I sit there all day being like, oh, I really should do this or should do that. And then I end up just going on being like, blah, blah, blah. Like I just say whatever. And that's just who I am. Like it's hard for me to be overly curated in that way. So for better or for worse, that's just the way it is for me. And I mean, yeah, the compromise of like doing like always advertising myself. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's hard. And breaking into the US market, it's like in Canada, I feel like, yeah, I feel like it's my home and I feel like I have so many friends, like fans, friends, like people that are just like rooting for me. And then I cross the border and there's a like I have good people rooting for me, but it is just not the same. And so it's trying to figure out ways to do the marketing part, but then still feel authentic to myself. That's what I'm always juggling.
That's the struggle, right? Is balancing that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess like you haven't had a chance to probably see a lot of these people in the US for a while because shows, I mean, only recently started happening again.
Well, for sure. I started a year ago. So then basically it's just like revisiting these places that I was supposed to be going in 2019 and hoping the people that said they care still care and just showing up and regardless of who shows up, I have a great band with me right now and a great like just crew of people that are so talented and community oriented and not toxically positive but positive like in a way that it helps me through. It's like we're our own little team, so I feel like that goes a long way for me. Morale and like that kind of stuff. It's like the tour part is so interesting because the show is such a big part of it emotionally, but in terms of just your time, it is a small blip on the radar of how you're filling your time. Like your professional time fillers. I feel like the guys were saying something like that on this last tour. We're professional time wasters or time fillers because it's like you have all this time where you're just like waiting to play the show, where you're in the hotel room, and it's a mental game of like not sitting there and letting my little imposter syndrome person hamster in my head be like, "You're a loser. You're a loser. What are you doing here, you dumb bitch?" Like it's that kind of shit that I have to fight with. So that's why it's so important that a person surrounds themselves with good people that they love because yeah, the mental game of all of this is real.
Yeah, I can't imagine, especially when you're going into new areas. Like, I mean, you're going into the States where you don't necessarily have the same sort of network you built up over the years of touring like you would have in Canada,
Yeah.
or especially locally.
Yeah, and I'm always impressed when people show up and are singing the words. To me, it's just like I feel like I'm pleasantly surprised in like different markets, but it's like, yeah, we'll go to some places and there'll be 100+ people there, and we'll go to other places and there'll maybe be like 10+ people there, and you just have to play the same show that you would either way. So then it's between you and yourself and you and your people on stage because I don't want to get off stage and feel like I am not living up to the best of my ability, like not like that doesn't feel good for me,
Yeah.
especially with all the time that you're not on stage, as if you want to show up and just because there's 10 people there you're going to go on stage and be like, I don't fucking care, like you all. Yeah, that's where the mental game comes in.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense for sure. I know this album's been out for a few months now, but the previous one got so much acclaim. I mean, it really you really got a lot of positive attention from it in terms of award nominations and it was in a lot of top 10 lists and things like that. Was there any pressure on you with this one to thinking like, oh, this is what happened last time? How do I kind of match that or beat that?
Yeah, I was definitely thinking about that. Not in a way that it affected what I was writing, but in a way that when it was done, I was just like, oh fuck. Is there a song like this on this record? Is there going to be a moment like this on this record too? Or like the things that these people said that they liked, are they going to relate to it the same way? But I had to let a lot of that go because it was like, well, I'm not going to change anything and I'm not going to sit here and try. Like I knew that I made something that was truthful and authentic to me. So the anxiety that I had, that I normally have, was different on this record cycle than it was for the last one. Yeah, there were different expectations. Like, am I going to be given a good review on Exclaim, or like, are people going to talk about it? But at the same time, like with the last record, I was so terrified that I was fucking everything up. And I had no reference point for it's all going to be okay, because I had never done it before. And with this one, it was like, okay, it's going to be okay. I've done this before. I can sleep at night. I don't have to wake up in a cold sweat being like, did I send the right email? Like, it's like, okay, I've done that before, and maybe I sent the right email, maybe I sent the wrong email, but like, we can be okay. And I had more of a reference point. So yeah, you feel the pressure, but I knew that I made something that I was proud of. So I was kind of like, fuck the haters, for lack of a
Yeah.
better phrase.
Well, and I guess once you've made it too, and once you've released it and it's out there, it's you have no control over it at that point, right? It's out of
That's
your
it.
hands.
And that's the beauty and the pain of it. It's like, that's what's so cool about making music and putting it out there, is that you think you know what a song is about, and you then hear someone else's interpretation, and it's like, so can be so profound and beautiful, and it had nothing to do with the intention that you had when you wrote it, but it's still valid. It's just so cool to me when other people hear it, and then you kind of like, then I kind of start to listen to songs differently once they're out there too, like songs that I wrote and then I perform them. And like a song like Juniper, that was the first song that ever really got on the radio for me,
Yeah.
was a song that I thought I understood how it felt, and then I started performing it and people really gravitated towards that song, and it started to feel entirely different. And I still perform it now, and it's still a song that wherever I go, people are singing along, like any city, like be it the small crowds or the big crowds. And it baffles my mind. Like, you can't predict how things like that are gonna turn out. And I don't want to be that artist that's like, this is exactly how you should feel when you listen
Yeah.
to this. It's like, the beauty of it is letting it loose, and you feel however you feel.
Well, and I guess you can get different interpretations on your own work, which is kind of interesting based on how other people, the feedback you get from other people, and how it affected them, and what they thought it was about, and all that.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating. I'm always fascinated by that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the things that I found interesting is I tend to hoard local music. Like I have way too many local albums, and I grab them whenever I can at thrift stores or
We
whatever.
love you for it.
And I've been going through them alphabetically, which is I started in January, and I'm like only on or something now. Like it's taken forever. Every day I'm listening to it. But you've come up on so many different albums. Just I mean like random the Shikamin and New Lightweights and just various things that I keep seeing you appear on. It's like, oh yeah, right. But a lot of that stuff is very stylistically different. Like it's definitely more rootsy, more kind of obviously folk inspired. Has the pop thing always been there for you? And this is just sort of you finally letting it out, or
Yeah, I've always loved pop music, and there have been times in my life where I've been too cool to admit it, or times in my life where I didn't really have an outlet for it in terms of writing. Or like the thing with a band like the New Lightweights or Shit Gemin, like two totally different projects. With the New Lightweights, we
yeah,
did so many covers, and we would write songs together, Ariel and I, and then we would both bring our own kind of like perspectives, and then that would come together and form something completely different. With Shikemin, it was the same thing, except with Shikemin, because there were so many writers in the group and so many singers in the group, I would be writing maybe like 10 songs to bring to the group, but maybe two would get on a record. So then I would just have all of these songs kind of in a basket in my basement, kind of waiting for whenever their day in the sun would be. So a lot of the first stuff that I did as Begonia, like I feel like maybe one or two of the songs was like just something I found in an old basket in the basement. Like it was just stuff that I would dig through and be like, oh yeah, this is a part of me. Okay, now what am I trying to say? And I didn't necessarily like set out when starting this project to be a pop artist, but then it was just like, as I kept writing, it's like, this is where this is going, and this is fun, and I want to indulge in this.
yeah.
It felt like an indulgence at first, and now it just feels like me. So
Well, that's what you want, right? You want to have that feeling of honesty and genuineness to yourself for sure. Do you think that at this point, you've got what 2 albums and an EP out now as Begonia? Do you feel like you've sort of honed what the Begonia sound is? Like, has it achieved its final form?
I don't know. I feel like it's achieved the form that it is now, definitely. And I feel like it's evolved like from the EP to Powder Blue. It's like from Lady in Mine to Powder Blue. It's
Yeah.
definitely, I see the through line and it feels evolved to me. But who the fuck knows? I keep thinking like when I'm 40, maybe I'll make a record, just me and a guitar or something. I don't know. There's so many different ways that I write songs alone too. And then it changes when I get with kind of the collaborators that I write with. And I don't really have like hard and fast rules when it comes to that kind of stuff. And for me, it's like my voice is the through line. I'm the through line. So if people are on this journey with me, then hopefully they'll be down with wherever it takes me next. And I don't even know where that is. So.
Right. There's something that's going to appeal to them, obviously, because they've listened to you for this long now, and they're still with you, right? So
You
yeah.
would hope so. You would hope so. But who knows? I mean, yeah, who the fuck knows? I do not know what like genre pool I would dip in. But I do feel like, to be fair, I have refined my opinion a lot, like in the studio and stuff. And that's something that takes so much time, just to be like decisive
Yeah.
or to know kind of, because that is such the art of making music is like having opinions. And the art of collaborating and making music is just like having opinions and being firm in them. And I feel like I've gotten far better at just being confident in my opinions, so that in turn I'm sure that has narrowed the sound or like evolved the sound as well.
Do you ever listen to the older stuff and think, oh, if I had been stronger in this opinion, this maybe would have sounded like this, or I wish I had done it? Or are you happy to sort of leave that as this is how it was, this is how it was released?
Yeah, I don't go back often. I don't go back often, honestly. But if I think about it, there's some songs that I'm like, I never would have put that out. But there's some clothes that I look at and I'm like, I never would have worn that. But it's like, that's fashion, that's music. It's like, it's meant to change and evolve as you do as a person. I believe that. So I wouldn't, I'm sure I've evolved even in my thinking about life since I
Yeah.
wrote those songs, like, and I welcome that. And I remember at first, before I put out the Lady in Mind EP, I was just like, oh, we can't do it yet because it's not perfect, it's not like exactly how I know I want to sound, but I didn't really know what that was yet. But I just would talk to so many of my artist friends as well, and it's like, okay, well, I think about some of my favorite artists and I go back in their catalog, and I'm not like embarrassed for them that they put out their first album and maybe it wasn't the most refined thing that they ever made. It's like so fun to look back on people's journeys. And I hope that that's what people can see with me, is that I've definitely been on a journey.
So how can people this is a really cheesy segue, but how can people find hear the latest step of your journey? Uh, obviously the way people consume music is we're in this weird dystopian future where there's no sort of one format that people listen to music. I mean, you have people like me who refuse to get rid of physical stuff. You have people who are on all the various streaming services. There's so many options. What's the
Mm-hmm.
best way for someone to find out? To check out your latest stuff and go back if they feel like it.
I mean, it's online everywhere. I mean, Bandcamp's a great place to do the artist. It's the best way to support
Yeah.
artists in the sense where when you buy stuff, they don't take an exorbitant cut, and so that's a thing. So if you want to get the physical stuff, like go to my website, go to Bandcamp. That's kind of the way to do it. But I mean, yeah, my stuff's on every streaming service, I'm pretty sure. And if it's not, just send me a DM because then I'll want to know.
Right on. And then the good thing about this being a podcast is, I mean, when we're talking right now, you're about to go on tour in the States. But someone could hear this a year from now, and by then, who knows where you'll be? You could have more music. Like, nobody knows, right? So, what's
Yeah.
the best way to sort of keep up on what you're doing? Is it the website, or like you mentioned earlier, social media?
Website is like good just to see the tour dates, but social media, I'm probably the most active on Instagram right now. Instagram and TikTok is where I am the most active. I'm so bad at Twitter, and I mean, Twitter feels like a burning pile of garbage anyways.
It kind of does,
And
yeah.
and I mean, I still keep up on Facebook for you Facebookers, but that's just not where I hang. That's not where I cross post there, but I'm mostly on Instagram and TikTok.
Awesome. Okay.
Hello Begonia is my
Hello,
handle.
Begonia is the handle on all those. Okay, right on.